We're back in the library, and we found here a bit of a brute of a book, but it's in rough shape. Not surprising, since it's been in the library here since the late 1700s. It's a book by the East India Company. It's seen better days. Let's see if we can fix it up. Make sure those are upright. First thing is to take a look at it. It has one cover there, but it is not attached. Some stickers. Loose pages at the front, so there's been some kind of rot on the cover. I don't think it's been smashed or anything like that. It looks more like just age and moisture. There's some water staining on the bottom. The spine is attached. It's not a hollow spine, which makes it potentially a bit trickier to take apart. There we can see the water staining on the bottom, mostly near the front. A few tears. Little pieces broken off. Corners bent, that's no big deal, we can fix that. The paper's pretty bright for most of the book. A few little stains here and there, a little bit of color change around the edges. Now, what is this? This part of the book, the page is a very different color. The type is the same size and width, but there's no header. We'll have to have a closer look at that after. For the most part, decent shape. We have some missing pages here. And then another section, History of the East India Company. The world's first multinational corporation. And it became so powerful so quickly that it had an army twice the size of the British government. And in fact, it took over India. And then the British government took it over from them. But initially it was the East India Company invading and taking over territory and strong-arming the local strongmen. Now this is a beautiful spine. Has some tape on it. I'd love to be able to save it. There's a lot of gilding, but it is really firmly attached. It's quite dry. Worn out a bit at the bottom. I'll give it a bit of a shot, see if I can save it, but I don't know that I have high hopes for it, which is a shame. You can do something that gives it a nod of appreciation to whoever built it back in the day. I'm going to try heat first. It's probably animal glue. In that age, I think that's all they had. So we'll warm it up and put a bit of moisture on it. See if there's any chance of peeling this leather off intact, but I don't think so. It's too brittle. Give it a little wipe and it just comes apart. That's not going to be savable, which is a shame, but let's take it off of there. In case you're worried about me damaging the signatures there, we still have quite a substantial layer of glue between that leather and the backs of the signatures. We can't see them yet, and we should be able to see them as we get closer. The leather's coming off pretty easily, but it feels like glass underneath. And that is the sign of good glue from back in the day. When we do these old books, we often find places where they've cut corners. They've used poor thread or poor glue, or worst of all, poor paper. And in the case of the glue and the thread, it makes it easy to take the books apart. This one, however, they did not cut corners. I'll take this bit of tape off. This is a book that was put together to last. If we can get these cords removed, it'll be easier to get the paper to come apart, but easier said than done. There we go. The signatures will be sewn with the thread going along the inside of the signatures, looping around that thick string, and then going back inside. So if we can get the strings moved out, then most of the thread will have been cut as we cut the string. So we'll go right along, cut all the little threads that are holding that string in there, and the string's holding it all together. The string inside is fairly rotten, but still has enough strength to cut the paper if we pull it out. So we'll need to be a little bit careful here and hopefully not do too much damage. We will do some damage, just like with archaeology. This is a destructive process. We're taking apart something that was made not to come apart. Now when we get inside any of these little strings that we can cut, then we free the pages up from those. Just leave the glue to get. Usually with books of this age, the glue disintegrates and comes apart quite easily. This is good glue though. After some time of picking and pulling and cutting and scraping, we now have separate signatures. But they're a bit rough and they're dirty and they need to be cleaned. Here's this page again. It does seem to fit in there, and if we follow the writing, we'll find the right place for it. This back signature is also quite damaged, so the chances are good that they go together. Let me have a little think on the best way to take care of this, and then we'll tackle it when the time comes. First, let's get the main signatures cleaned up of glue. Often when you take this glue off, it's the only thing holding the paper together. The paper itself is disintegrated. But when we're lucky, some of it is still intact. And we don't have to repair the page with repair paper. Lots of these, though, we will. This book's about 1,000 pages, and they're thick pages and big pages. So we'll need to make sure that they have a strong binding in the middle. Sometimes a little chunk of glue, a little pebble is in there. Tweezers are a great way to get those out of there. So we have signatures that are 2 pieces of paper folded together to make 8 pages per signature. That is not very many, but pretty normal, I think, with a big book with big pages like this. It'll need a lot of cleaning and then a lot of sewing later on, but we can do that. Again, I don't have a micro spatula. For some things, would be, I don't know about necessary, but nicer. But I do have a hand-chosen little butter knife that has the right degree of thinness and rounded corners to where I can get in there and take care of little stubborn bits. These threads can sometimes be so buried in the folds of the book from being there for 250 years or more that they're hard to find and get out of there. Rolling your finger back and forth across the crack helps. Okay, I think we found where our page belongs. There are no headers on these back pages. So we'll find where the text flows from one into the other. And I think it's right there. Yep, section 3, section 4. We found its home. So the very back page, that makes sense why it's so discolored. Very different color from the rest of the book. We'll press it down and then we'll see if we can't make him a little happier later. From our title page, we want to carefully take off any stickers without taking too many layers off the paper. I think we're mostly taking patina off of the paper. Patina is a layer that grows on there or adds up with age. And it's one way that we can verify the age of artifacts and books and things by the degree of patina they have on them. In this case, the sticker will peel off some of the patina, but it will leave most of the paper behind. All right, time for repairs. So that big water stain there, at first I wondered if I'd done that when I was taking the cover apart. I'd forgotten that it was there at the beginning. Things like that might happen, but we do avoid them if we can. All right, these two are in rough shape. I have my green board set up so that when I put the bottom page aligned with the bottom of the green board and the top page lined up with those two tapes right there, that is how wide the book is. So for this page that's lost all of its spine in the middle, all of its fold, this tells me how big it needs to be. Nice wide piece of repair paper should take care of that. This is Kozo, it's called. This particular one, actually I don't know if it's Kozo. I borrowed it from the archives at the castle because mine have not arrived yet. Had lots of wind, the airplane's not landing. And if the airplane doesn't land, we don't get our stuff. People on holiday here get to stay longer. People coming here don't get to come. So I think we're a week behind. I don't know if the plane landed today or not. We'll see. So a little word about the East India Company again. This was a huge, huge deal in the day. It was owned by shareholders and not by an individual, and it wasn't a government, so it was a strange new thing for them. But at one point, it made up 60% of the British Empire's income. Ran through the East India Company, a huge amount. And of course, at one point, they controlled this island. When the British were looking for a place to put Napoleon where he would stay, not be able to get away, this was where they decided to put him. But as far as prisons go, very comfortable setup for him. He didn't like it, of course. We like to be free, but take over the world a couple times. People don't like that. Because this is such a wide spread, I don't want to depend on just one layer of the Kozo paper. It's a long fiber paper, so it can be very thin while still being strong. But just to be extra sure, this is near the end of the book. It'll likely take a lot of wear. Usually things that are very worn out are going to take more wear in the future as well. Fronts of books and edges and things like that. So here, I'm going to very gently pack that down. When it's wet, it's quite fragile. So I use that ruler to get a nice flat surface over it that I can push down quite hard and slide my fingers along, and it won't tear up the kozo paper. I often wait until it dries before I cut the ends off, but I think in this case I'm going to try and combine these two steps. That little scrunching of the paper is why I tend to wait, but I want to get this thing chugging along. It's taken quite a bit longer than the previous project. And I don't want you guys to wait too long for another video. I know what that's like. Waiting for a video you want to see and the maker is just taking their sweet time. So hopefully I'll get this out to you shortly. There, now we are strong. We'll fold that later. Let it dry and get it nice and crispy. Now the rest of them we have a look. There's a judgment call. Is it strong enough to survive on its own, or does it need reinforcement? Remember, we have 2 sheets per signature, and the outside one that had all the glue on it is usually quite damaged. So with a lot of signatures, we're going to need a lot of repair paper. So nice 1.5 centimeter, 15 millimeter width is enough to get 7 on either side and then 1 around the fold. And especially once bound up in a book, it's enough to hold it quite securely. And it doesn't show because this is quite thick paper compared to the stuff I have coming, this kozo paper. I want to be discreet with it. I have my sharpening stone and then the steel letters in the orange box there to hold the papers in place. I get a nice liberal layer of glue on one side of the kozo paper strip. I use scrap paper for the underside there so the overspill of the glue doesn't get on the table, but I'm not wasting new paper. Now with this thinner strip, I need to be a little more careful about dragging and pressing on it. It'll be quite fragile until it gets stuck onto the paper and bonds itself. And for these, I only need it on one side. They're holding on a little bit on their own. This is just giving what's already there a little extra strength. I go through, I pick out any little bits of glue that I missed the first time, get it as smooth as possible, but also as thin as possible. When we add these layers of paper and fold it over especially, it makes the spine thicker. It's called swelling. And a thicker spine with the rest of the pages being thin makes the book kind of a pie shape. We don't want a pie-shaped book, we want a brick-shaped book. So we'll minimize the spine swell in a number of ways. One of them is a good clean fold, pressed down tight, and then we'll look at things like rounding, which you'll see in the next section. So this one's holding on either side, but it's got a big gap in the middle. Once I remove a bit of this glue, it might have a couple of other smaller gaps. We want to make sure that it is good and solid. When you're putting glue on this, it can be tricky. What I like to do is get the glue on the brush and then drag it down the length of it while rolling it to get a bit of glue all the way down, which is not what I'm doing here. Here I'm just painting it on like a wall. But you paint a long strip down the middle and then spread it out to either side just to make sure it gets to the edges. You don't want unglued edges that might catch on something and tear away. See, there's showing the fragility of the kozo paper when it's moist. And here we have, each of these is 2 sheets folded over to make 4. And it was a lot of folding and repairing and putting back together, but it is satisfying to see that thing come together. There's one leaf missing in the middle. I think it's a map. I'm going to search the library, see if I can find that and tip it in later on. In the meantime, though, we can forge ahead. See how swollen that spine is compared to the rest of it? We don't want that. And here is our last 4 pages or so of the book, that little discolored one. It's really thin. It feels soft like a rag. And its folds are very brittle. I think I could pull that little corner off there with barely a pull of the hand. So I have a plan for it. I have this little bit of agate here that's used for coloring the spines. Smooth surface to flatten out those wrinkles. Now I'm going to do a little bit of copying. Take the damaged paper, run it through. I printed it on paper that's already colored, so it comes out even a little darker than it is. But all of the gaps show in a similar color to the rest of the book, and I think is a more harmonious look than if I'd have done it on white. The paper would have been the same color, but behind it would have been flashes of bright white. I think this is better. Line it up with its image. And I'm just going to take that extra bit off the top. Now, because the page wouldn't stand up on its own, my strategy here is to make a copy of the back of it and then paste this side onto it, which will make it really strong. It'll show one side of the original and a copy of the original on the other one. Now again, if we were conserving this book, trying to take it back to what it originally was, or to protect something that's extremely rare, we would make different choices here. My mandate is to make this book readable and to make it last another 200-300 years so that it can be used in the library. People can come in and read about the history of the island and various other topics without damaging the artifacts. While we were working in the library the other day, we came across a game board that Napoleon used to play. I might do a little video on that at some point, because although it's not a book, it's a matched set with a little writing desk, little tabletop writing desk, and they are very interesting. So here we go, we flatten this all out, and it is already feeling so much better. This is going to be able to last a long time like this, with a protected back on it. Put a plastic sheet over the top of it so if any glue squishes out it won't stick to anything, and we'll just let it press. Hour or so later, there we go. I think it looks pretty good. The back sheet is dark, of course, but it's strong. We have all the other signatures together. Let's put this one together. And again, these were never together. There's nothing holding them together because the edges were all worn away. So we'll put one on this side, not a big wide one. We only need about 5 millimeters on each side to hold it solidly together when it's in the book. I'll line up that right-hand side with the edge of the page so I don't have to trim it, which is easier to do with a nice flat page than something that's curling over. And I daringly ran my fingers along it without using the ruler and got a couple of little wrinkles that I'll need to iron out. I should know better. I should know better. There we go. Pack that down. My ruler's getting caked in glue on the top from my fingertips, but that'll roll off nice and clean once it dries. It's always good to be a bit gentle lifting these papers up. They can not only stick to the green part a little bit if a touch of glue gets down, but just the airflow underneath them. There's such a big surface area that they suck down to the paper a little bit. So there we go. We've got that side done. Stick the little curly edges of the old paper down onto the kozo, and then get another side going. Sometimes the most wrecked parts of books, even though they're a lot of trouble, they are so satisfying to see them in their final, solid, safe position at the end. And there we go. We'll fold that over. Press it down a little for a nice tight fold. The other leaf goes inside. I won't worry about the edges of these yet. I'll be trimming the book, and I think most of those problems will go away with the trim. But in the meantime, everything needs to go flat. So with the bone folder, I'm just making sure that the folds are nice and thin. Now I call it a bone folder. I should probably call it a bone folder. That doesn't even really work. It doesn't fold bones. It used to be made of bone. Now it is inexpensive plastic. Works really well though. Maybe one day I'll have a real bone one. Don't know that it would make any difference. A little high speed for you here because, trust me, you don't want to spend the amount of time watching this that it took to do. But it went pretty well, no real problems. There was one I hadn't repaired that I changed my mind and repaired. Did that off camera though. And there we go. If it were only that quick. Do 4 books a day. And there's the last page. So a little look. Beautiful tight edges all repaired. Everything in order except for one possible missing map. And that's it for the cleanup. Next time we'll do our punching, sewing, and get some cardboard covers on this ready for the leather. Until then, have a great week, and we'll have more for you soon.